What is one thing you'd like to do before you die? I'll ask you again. What is one thing you'd like to do before you die? Very good. Okay, now I'll sit down. Very good. This was a question that was posed to a man named Frank Ferrante. And his living into the answer of that question transformed his life so much that a documentary was created about his journey, and it was called May I Be Frank. Kind of handy that his name was Frank, wouldn't you say? May I Be Frank. And I saw this film about 10 days ago, and it transformed my life so much that I wanted it to be the center of my talk today. What do you want to do? What's one thing you want to do before you die? Frank Ferrante walked into a place called Cafe Gratitude in San Francisco, California in 2005. This is a place, it's a raw food restaurant, and not only do they serve live and vibrant food, Cafe Gratitude promotes a live and vibrant lifestyle. So not only is the food there live and vibrant, they also have affirmations as the name of each one of their food items. And you can't get the food unless you say the affirmation. So let's just read a little from their menu. There's a juice called I Am Worthy. There's a smoothie called I Am Luscious. There's the appetizer plate that's called I Am Abundance. And you can't get the food unless you say the affirmation, because they understand, as we do here at Unity, and a book title that I loved for many years, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. You know, it's what that we believe about ourselves and our lives that allow us to live this life that we're born to live. What is one thing I want to do before I die? Now, when Frank walked into Cafe Gratitude, he was really led by the word gratitude, because gratitude is the essence of what brings the joy into our life. But Frank was 54 years old. He was 100 pounds overweight. Years before, he'd been diagnosed with hepatitis C. He was taking injections every day for this disorder, and all the side effects of the disorder, he had to take all these other medications because he was having to deal with the side effects of the medication for hepatitis C. So Frank was unhealthy, unhappy, overweight, depressed, not feeling very alive. And so when he was asked this question, what do you want to do? What's one thing you want to do before you die? He said, I want to have a loving relationship. I want to know the love that I am, and I want to have a loving relationship. And so there were three young men at this raw food restaurant that were running the place, Carrie, Connor, and Ryland, 20-year-olds eating raw food. You can imagine the vibrancy coming out of their face. And they said to Frank, because Frank is a guy from Brooklyn, New York, that was, you know, so it was the perfect kind of combination of a guy that was a little skeptical about this raw food stuff, but a guy that really wanted to live. And these fellows said, we will support you to go through a transformational journey if you're willing to say yes to this. And when I watched the film, because films really inspire me, I remembered a line from Shawshank Redemption that said, do you want to get busy living, or do you want to get busy dying? And at that moment in time, Frank decided he wanted to get busy living. And so he said yes to this journey that included certainly the 3 meals a day that were this raw food diet, and the water, and the exercise, and all the things we know about how to lose weight and be healthy, right? But he also committed, and this is what got my attention as a Unity student, he committed to standing in front of a mirror, being a man in the mirror every day and doing affirmations. He committed and signed on the dotted line to not degrade himself for 42 days. And he also committed to letting these guys, these young guys, be his transformational cheerleaders. And friends, this is what I see we do in Unity. You know, we show up for this transformation. To come on Sunday morning, you have to say, yes, I'm choosing my life rather than wandering around in some sleepwalking experience of not knowing who I am. And so Frank's story is all of our story. What do you want to do before you die? So I looked into this, as I watched this story of Frank and watched his transformation, I sort of saw 3 areas that this documentary is about that can apply to our experience here at Unity. That the first thing Frank had to do was to love his body, was to recognize the way that he was polluting this beautiful vessel that carries our spirit. And secondly, he had to support his spirit. He had to be willing to do these affirmations and tell himself the truth about who he was so he could live from that place. And finally, he had to receive support and community and love and watch how the world wanted to support him in the beauty that he is. So let's look at this first part of this, the loving your body. You know, Unity, we do a lot of things around loving your spirit and getting on track with your spiritual path, but many of us ignore this wonderful vessel in which we live. Certainly Frank, 100 pounds overweight, was not very much in love with his body. In fact, when he answered the question, I want to have love in my life, he said, but nobody's going to love me looking like this. And they said, you know, these 3 guys said, we'll help you transform. So he was willing to change the way he ate, but as we know, anytime you change anything about your pattern that you have, you know, all the reasons why you weren't taking care of yourself start to come up. You know, when we seek health, we often see the way that we haven't been healthy in our life. When we seek love, we see the ways that we're not being loving with ourselves. And so this was the opportunity that he had as he started eating this raw food. Now, Frank, it was just so great because he is from New York. You know, they had him drink this wheatgrass drink every morning. And he'd slug it down and he'd say, you know, I could have just gotten this out of the back of my lawnmower. You're making me drink this stuff. But he was committed to this journey of wellness in his body. Now, I've looked a lot at food in my life. I was a flight attendant, and I used to work with a lot of women with eating disorders. And it was, again, that question, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you. But we've been trained so poorly around food that now it's become a judgment. You know, have you noticed how you'll tell yourself you're being good if you eat this, or you're being bad if you eat that? I can see a lot of nodding heads, you know, that it's not being good or bad. It's about being unskilled and skillful. It's about being wounded, perhaps, in your understanding of your nutrition and letting yourself be healed. You know, I grew up, you know, with my mother. She would make this thing called mystery meatloaf. You know, anything that has mystery in the word of your food is not so great. And we don't know what was in that meatloaf, but I do know there were dollops of Velveeta throughout the meatloaf. And does anybody know what Velveeta is? I mean, I think you could have also fixed a leak in the roof with Velveeta. But that's what we ate once a week. And our outing was we would go to Jack in the Box, and then my sister started saying, something's wrong with that secret sauce. Secret sauce, again, what the heck's in that stuff? So we want to be gentle with ourselves as we start to look at the way that we're not honoring the liveness of our body. The thing that we're eating fresh, lively things, because guess what? You're a fresh, lively person. You know, your body is this incredible live experience. And you'll notice as you start to ingest things that are about liveness and spirit, you just feel better. So this isn't a raw food commercial, although, you know, those guys that were eating raw food look pretty good. But that we really start to listen to our body, and we start to love our body as we are on this journey of spirituality.